Yeah, so the count starts?
Yes, sir. On my count of 3, 2, 1, we are live now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the first event on OpenRAN India 2021. This is a virtual conference and live conference. As you see, the COVID pandemic is hitting the second wave, and hoping to people are saying the doctors are preparing for the third wave. So maybe we need to continue for some more time on the virtual. Having said that, I'm very happy to share that, even in the virtual, we have a registration of people of 850 plus must have been touched 1,000 in the morning. So it shows that the interest on this topic, and I'm very happy to see the three operators of India and the vendors, three vendors, those who are really hoping to hit this industry on the open source, open RAN for our country. Our chief guest, Hrs Gupta ji, he was the former secretary GRAI, presently the senior DDG at DOT. So he has seen he was earlier with the policy, then went to the regulator, now back to the policy again. So he is going to share all the experience from the regulator perspective as well as the policy perspective, what is going to be the open RAN in India. Having said that, I would like to welcome Sri T.V. Ramchandran. No need of an introduction of T.V. Ramchandran sir, who's been in the industry for more than 3 decades now, almost 4 decades. President of Broadband India Forum, and he's been in the various committees in India on the 5G high-level committee and everything. Doesn't need any introduction. Whatever I may say about TV sir, it will be too less. So, sir, without wasting much of a time, I would invite you to give the welcome speech.
Thank you very much, Shashi, for your overkind words of introduction. Grossly exaggerated, but I defer to you. Respected Chief Guest, Sir, Sri Sunil Gupta, Senior DDG DOT, and former Secretary of TRAI, a most distinguished and experienced person, all esteemed panelists there before us, speakers and distinguished attendees, and our many friends from media and the event partners, the great event partners who are making this happen. And I'm so pleased to hear that over 850 have registered for this meaty session on Open RAN, which is the very first time it's happening in India. So I'm greatly delighted, privileged to welcome you all to this virtual conference, which marks a milestone in the development and growth of Indian mobile networks. And as one who has been there from the beginning, most of you have been there from the beginning, you're all aware that mobile technology in India has been a real revolutionary change bringer in the way we live and work over the last 25 years. And over the 25 years has evolved beautifully from 2G to 3G to 4G, and now at the threshold of entering 5G. There are enormous expectations from 5G. A little bit about this a little later, but enormous expectations, which is the first G to step out of telecom vertical and into many other industry verticals of the economy. Manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, education, research, so on. And based on extremely high speeds in terms of gigabytes, very low latency in milliseconds, all the characters very well known to all this august audience. 5G is indeed expected to embrace and change remarkably every aspect of our life, living and working in India again. And this is evidenced by more and more studies coming out every day. Even today, I've seen a study which talks of some humongous figures. I'll deal with that later. But what I want to say is, while we have done extremely well in the last 25 years, and particularly the telco operators have done remarkably in servicing the nation, in creating a world-class digital infrastructure and connecting to over 1 billion people. So it's been a remarkable thing from ground zero, when we didn't even have an analog network, to come to this stage. I think all credit goes to the telcos who have made it happen. However, while this is a great thing, one important legacy characteristic of which has been with us is that of the use of closed legacy networks with proprietary interfaces between the core and radio networks. This has, in several ways, in my humble opinion, limited the flexibility and innovation possible with the networks, and could possibly become a serious limitation going forward in the growth of a digital economy. However, we are here to today celebrate our transition from that era of closed networks to the age of the open RAN networks, ORAN networks, in fact, to the age of the virtualized ORAN. Needless to say, the advantages of such ORAN networks would be innumerable, because it would be the foundation of flexibility and innovation. And not only that, it will go across to multiple verticals of the economy. Rather than combining the baseband and radio products in a proprietary solution, ORAN facilitates the powerful blended architectures, deploying elements from various vendors. The key benefit is the maximization of customer benefit. And ultimately, that's the name of the game. Customer is the king. If he wins out, all of us are going to win out. So that is going to be a particular benefit in India, because here our customers are very conscious of the value for their money. And we have a great opportunity, particularly in 5G, because some people think that we are a late starter in 5G. Other countries have been there already 2 years. So India has, some of the naysayers who are around always, they say, oh, India has missed its opportunity. I beg to disagree. Yes, we may be slightly late, but we got abundance of advantages in learnings from others. They've all done great jobs elsewhere in the world, and they're talking about millions of 5G subscribers already there. There's a lot of learning experience, which we readily can absorb. And more important, we are coming right at a time when ORAN is happening. And so 5G is all about innovation. And with coming with ORAN, we'll be doubly charged. And I think that's going to be a great, great benefit. And by adopting ORAN right from inception, as we have the opportunity to do, I think we have the opportunity to also catch up with those who have started before us in many segments. Regulation and policy frameworks would always help us to facilitate this, and they have been doing so since 1995. We are one of the best systems in the world, and I'm sure that they would help facilitate the growth-oriented ORAN systems. And the same as combination of our bold entrepreneurship of the telcos, coupled with progressive policy making and enabling regulation, all the three ingredients together is going to make us get a big win-win in this area. With the growth envisaged, and we now have forecasts of 330 million or more 5G connections in India in just another 5 years, 2026. That's the latest report I've seen this morning. A large chunk of our global network is likely to be here, happening here. And virtual ORAN is going to further catalyze this. We are blessed with a very young workforce, a strong and stable judicial system, and a great policy and regulatory framework. I think we are blessed with all these great things. So what more could an investor seek? That's my question. India holds a promise of being one of the topmost global investment destinations in the decade ahead. And we have today a scintillating galaxy of specialist speakers, most knowledgeable and respected chief guests here with us, eminent chairpersons and moderators. I'm sure you'll have abundant learnings from all their presentations and addresses. And therefore, I do not wish to take even 1 second more between you and them. I will conclude here by wishing you all the best, and more importantly, praying for the success of the growth of ORAN in India. Over to you, Shashi. Thank you.
Thank you, TB sir. Thank you for giving a fantastic welcome speech and where the Open RAN is heading in India. Now we move to the first industry keynote speaker from Red Hat, being the time schedule of US and India. His video is going to be presented in another couple of seconds. Before that, I just wanted to share the person who works with us, Siddharth Sharma, Vice President of our events, who started this event and did the research on this event. You all need to pray for his speedy recovery. He's in ventilator for last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So you must have received a mail from Siddharth. He's the one who did all the research for this event along with Ranjit. So do pray for Siddharth Sharma for his speedy recovery. He is going through a bad time. He is in Guwahati. Otherwise, all parameters are good. Doctors are hoping that he'll be out from ventilators soon. Thank you. And now I request Care to start the video of Daryl.
Greetings and good day. My name is Daryl Jordan Smith. I'm the Senior Vice President of Industries and Global Accounts here at Red Hat. It's an absolute privilege to have the opportunity today to walk you through how we're seeing this market evolve and what the opportunities are before us and how that all comes together with this new and evolving technology called Open RAN. So first of all, let's look at the market overall. As you can see from the left-hand part of this slide, you have a non-standalone 5G environment that's typically running on existing 4G based infrastructure, and you have standalone environment, which is sort of a brand new greenfield-based environment running 5G. We're seeing ORAN actually, or Open RAN, actually starting to grow, as you see with the standalone area of the network in the marketplace. We see that as a great opportunity, a great focal area for ORAN overall. And on the right-hand side here, you see the overall growth in terms of market opportunity. Between now and 2024, the market is actually estimating the size of the ORAN market to be about $3.2 billion, but some very aggressive growth, as you can see, overall in the marketplace. So we're seeing this as a very interesting area, and it's actually being seeded by some premier operators around the world. So companies like Orange, Telefonica, Vodafone, and Telecom Italia have stated that they are actually going to production-based ORAN deployments by the end of 2022, and that's really significant from a commercial perspective because it's seeding the marketplace. It's actually enabling companies to actually invest, build products and solutions, do the integration to do that. And the reason why the operators are really focusing in this area is because ORAN drives up innovation. And when you have increased innovation and you disaggregate the network infrastructure, you open different interfaces, which I'll talk about in a minute, you actually lower the cost. And at the same time, you're increasing the overall choice that you actually have in the marketplace. So you can actually leverage a multitude of different vendors and ecosystems to actually execute more holistically in this particular space. So it's a particularly exciting environment. And as I was just saying, this is all about RAN decentralization and RAN cloudification. So centralization is around the disaggregation of software and hardware, so you can split the functionality and the baseband technology that goes into the tower, and you can actually move it to the cloud, again separating hardware and software to drive some economics around telco-based, cloud-based implementations. And it's really underpinned by open standards and open source technology. And it's not just open source, but it's we're seeing those two areas coming together and working together to again fuel innovation, fuel use cases, fuel opportunities to deliver net new services, which then drive the business case to move to a standalone 5G based environment more attractive for the operators. So as this slide talks to the fact that the Telecommunications Infrastructure Project, also called TIP, they're really focusing on hardware and open compute based platforms and certification. ORAN is really focusing on those open interfaces and opening those up in order to fuel and drive that disaggregation and the separation of hardware and software. So this is a very, very dynamic space, requires a significant amount of integration, but we're confident, as what we're seeing through the initial proof of concepts and pilots that we've been involved in, this is actually gaining momentum. And as we move forward in a little bit more detail, where we talk about, the front haul network itself and the interfaces, the 3GPP interfaces that are defined, you see sort of three layers here, three different implementations of RAN. One is talking about ORAN itself as an appliance. So if you were to build an appliance, put a lot of their software on bare metal to enable the radio unit, the ORU as it's called, or the distributed unit, the open distributed unit, and the interfaces talking to the central unit in the overall topology of a 4 or 5G based core environment. This is, is often referred to Open RAN from an appliance perspective. It's also important because a lot of people get confused between what is ORAN, what is vRAN, what is CRAN. There's a lot of nomenclature around here, and I wanted just to spend a moment talking about what is the virtualized RAN. It's really basically closed interfaces running on a cloud-based platform, either in VMs or containers, that enables you to deploy a virtual-based RAN environment. It is not open. So you don't necessarily have the benefits of the disaggregation of hardware and software that I was talking about on the previous slide. And then if you combine Open RAN and vRAN, you actually get the best of both worlds. You get the virtualization in the cloud platform layer, and you get the disaggregation of the front haul and the actual interfaces as defined by 3GPP. So it enables you to choose your vendor of choice from software, your vendor of choice from hardware, leverage the innovation that hardware acceleration will afford as we move forward in this particular space in order to open up new opportunities, new services that will help monetize the investment overall, which is really driving how we're moving forward in this industry and in this particular topic overall. Then, as I mentioned or hinted to on the previous slide, it's also important to understand that there is a lot of work to be done that has been done around performance. And in this slide, I talk a little bit about the importance of low latency, deterministic low latency. I talk about protocols that need to be developed, so handoff from one cell to the other in terms of precision time protocol are particularly important. All the hardware acceleration around FPGAs, smart NICs are also key in this area, where there's a lot of integration and work and driving a lot of that in order to get the tuning of the environment. You need to manage a very complex set of CPUs in the environment in the context of RAN itself. You've then got to look at the overall topology and how you manage that and the different footprints depending on the landscape and topology you might look to deploy. So you can imagine or visualize a very rural area compared to a very built-up area, managing that topology, driving such resources and making them available to the software layer from the hardware layer that allows you to do specific CPU pinning, look at optimizing input-output functions in terms of what you're trying to drive in terms of the network functions themselves, and in order to then manage that in order to give predictability and through a quality of service experience. And then obviously low latency is going to be really key for 5G based deployments and some of those new applications and service scenarios that we see evolving in this space. Then the other important thing in this environment, because of the dynamics of delivering very large amounts of cellular equipment across those different topologies, as we talked about, we've always got to be in a situation where we can reduce the footprint. Obviously, power is very important in some of these remote locations. Having choices in terms of hardware that you might want to deploy in those environments, and also being able to retire it and replace it without having to rip and replace absolutely everything, because you've got confidence through open standards and open source that these elements are actually able to integrate with each other and give you that degree of flexibility and allow you to innovate with your vendors of choice in terms of hardware and software and those elements. We also see in terms of zero-touch provisioning, it's particularly important. You know, automation at scale is critical in this environment, because we're not talking a couple of thousand nodes, we're talking hundreds of thousands of nodes in terms of actual deployments. And therefore, the ability to be able to manage that is also particularly key. And we're seeing a lot of work go into this area, into these commercial deployments by next year, by the end of next year, that enables all of these components to come together. And with that, you know, there are a number of ecosystem partners here that everyone needs to be aware of. And I've named them alphabetically. I didn't really want to sort of layer them by type. They're just layered alphabetically in terms of all these different partners. Certainly from a Red Hat perspective, we're working with, but many other companies are also working with, from a firm networks all the way through down into Samsung with hardware acceleration and special drivers with Intel and NVIDIA. Really exciting area for innovation. The other important part here is to know that in a cloud, you actually have to integrate different components or different cloud native applications and services in order to build the carrier grade capabilities needed to sustain a live network implementation. So integrating, partnering, certifying, understanding the life cycle in all of those elements, all of that testing needs to occur. And in many instances, we're seeing a different ecosystem of integrators coming to the forefront as well. You know, companies like Infosys or Tech Mahindra or Tata, you know, for just a few examples of big integrators looking at this particular market and space to integrate cloud native based applications, not just from a ORAN perspective, but how it's operated, how you manage all the business support systems associated with that, whether you actually put those in your own telco cloud-based environment, or you might want to put them in a managed public cloud instance. So these are really exciting areas of innovation which actually further lower the cost, increase the agility, deliver new services actually into the marketplace. And from a scale perspective, that's very, very important. It's all around zero touch. And my last slide really is to talk a little bit about, so where's Red Hat in all of this? So 2 years ago, before ORAN actually was formalized, I think the first meeting was in Santa Clara, actually in, if I remember correctly, 2017, where some of these concepts were first discussed, to where we are today in terms of actually getting the pilots and proofs of concepts, you know, deployed in real operators to get to a commercial deployment in 2022. Red Hat has been really focused on developing a cloud-based platform. We call it OpenShift, which is scalable in a private instance, in a private cloud, as well as in a public cloud instance, as well as actually developing all of the features and capabilities needed to run the zero tolerance, security, scalability, automation, the visibility of everything that needs to go on in this particular environment, and bringing the public cloud and the private cloud innovations together with those use cases that we've defined and we've been working with in terms of operators around the telco edge clouds. And as you can see from this diagram here, is over time, you know, we've been able to now deploy telco core 5G based infrastructures in the core of the network. We've been working at the telco edge, and we're now working very closely with a number of those partners and integrators you see at the last mile, all using a common platform called OpenShift. And as we actually eventually get to the customer edge, having a common platform allows telecommunications operators to scale and deliver services into the enterprise, and actually have the enterprise with mobile edge compute, MEC as it's sometimes called, co-locate, co-host applications and services at that far edge to deliver private 5G or private instances of next generation applications which are predominantly AI, ML, and AR, augmented reality, machine learning, and artificial intelligence based. So this is really what we're trying to do at Red Hat, to bring this alive and make sure that our platform is scalable, as I said, from core all the way up to the far edge into the enterprise, with all of the automation, the cloud native portability you need, and the operational elements that you need to maintain a network in this configuration, delivering carrier grade features in terms of availability, reliability, and performance. So with that, I would like to thank everybody for your time today. I hope that was a good introduction in terms of where we see the market, how it's evolving, how we are playing it from a Red Hat perspective, and that complete partner ecosystem that's really driving Open RAN today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daryl. What we heard from Daryl from the Red Hat. Moving to the next speaker, Shri Rajesh Singh, Executive Vice President, Radio and Strategy Planning, Vodafone Idea. Rajesh, over to you. You're not mute. You need to unmute, Rajesh.
Thank you, Shashi, and good morning to all, and including the audience. It's a very interesting topic, and thanks to give an opportunity. Let me present an operator view on the Open RAN. So I'll share my slides. It is let me share the screen. Okay. Can you is visible?
Yes, Rajesh, it's visible. It's visible. Yeah.
Thank you, Shashi. So just to see, just to set the context, I'm just giving a little bit overview, and then we are talking about the ecosystem impact areas and then some OPCO expectations. So on these three broader aspects, I'm just touching the points. So let us see how the technology evolving. I think Mr. TV in his opening address has talked about this, that how our technology evolving. So we all know 2G, we went to 3G, 4G, and now we embracing the 5G. We're going to embrace 5G, though global market has already embraced, but Indian market still need to catch up in the 5G. So what is happening recently in technology front? If you see the 2G, 3G, and 4G, it was basically you can say it was delivering the plain vanilla services of voice and data, and it was very, very nailed to services you can count upon. But once you talked about the 5G, it's going to be very, very different network. If you see the 5G and the basic three pillars on EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband, then we talk about MMTC, that's a massive machine type communication, and then URLLC, it's ultra reliable, low latency network. So these are three basic pillars on 5G, which is coming and going to deliver different kind of services. So it cannot be no more. The networks will be, just a vanilla architectural network. It will be very, very different, and it's going to be purpose-built network. So there is going to be paradigm shift the way network was going built up, and that's where this ORAN concepts also is coming in. It will give leverage to have the even cloudification, RAN cloudification, which was not leveraged in the past. The core cloudification and virtualization started, but RAN, it was still it was close knitted hardware, and it was very tightly coupled. So I think that's leveraging going to come. That will help to deploy 5G and deliver different kind of services. Networks of future will be very different. They will demand very high performing. Like in latency itself, it can vary from 1 millisecond to 10 milliseconds. What kind of services are needed to deliver? It will be very, very dense connectivity networks. So it will be versatile. You need agile network because your service delivery will be different. It's not going to be plain vanilla what we talked about voice and data, which was going forward. At the same time, the data consumption consumers increasingly keep on rising. They are with the more content rich coming in, and the entertainment is shifting from the larger screen to smarter phones. There's a high data consumption demand is there, and the cost of building the data is enormous today. We also have to see how we'll able to manage bringing the cost down, and that's where I think Open RAN also plays a big role. We need to see that TCO get optimized and we get the right cost of production because we have to deliver a lot of data traffic. So what are the key enablers on the ORAN? As previous speakers has talked about, I think inclusiveness is the most important parameter I'll see where the innovation has to come in. When it was very tightly coupled, I think it was limited to one OEM, the proprietary software, proprietary hardware. So innovation was missing. I think with coming this Open RAN, you will have a lot of scope of innovations with industry partners, and even with including third-party solution. Flexibility, no doubt, there is a hardware-software disaggregation. They're going to enable choice of cloud infrastructure options, and we can have various general-purpose use of the hardware, cards, and all those will be available to us. Multi-domain orchestration, now it has to be RAN, transport core, all orchestration together, because it was running in the different domains, as it was missing the open interfaces between these different components. So it was difficult to orchestrate all the layer together. So I think that will going to be key going forward. And the RAN programmability. RAN, as was being tightly coupled, the programmability was missing. So I think with Open RAN, those programmability is going to come. We have to foster network automations and support the non-RT RIC, because it's very important once you have multi-open interfaces, how to manage this. So radio intelligent controller is a key component who's going to manage the network on top of the SON. It was very set in the currently classic RAN. So we have to see that how the RIC component get on the top of RAN, Open RAN, and it gets more programmable in the networks. Automation is going to be key, because as network is going to be complex, it is a multi-layer networks, it's a multi-band, and then adaptation of open interfaces. So it has to enable the automation, which will make life easier, because you can't manage this such a complex network manually. With these enablers, I'll move on to what is the driver of the Open RAN. What we see the key drivers for Open RAN. Of course, increasing vendor choice. There's a multiple ecosystem, because we're seeing the shrinkages in the OEMs in the market. With Open RAN coming, a lot of new niche suppliers are going to come in the market and make sure that the ecosystem improves upon. There's a capex reduction. We're hoping there will be capex reduction with the multi-players coming in hardware or software and all components of the RAN. This should make the capex lower in the network, and containing the OPEX in the long term. That's the key as well as objectives of the Open RAN. Decreasing TTM, we have to quickly deploy the fastest time to market the services. That's always is the key requirement of the operators. We want to quicker, faster in the market. Increase software programmability and the introduction of new use cases. Once you move to edge cloud, open interfaces, and coming with the new APIs, you should be able to support new use cases to deliver to enterprises, small, medium segment enterprises, and as well as new use cases for the mobility networks. So where the Open RAN fits in? So there was EV, we know that user equipment, and there was a RAN access network, and there is a core network. So this is three basic components. But somehow radio access network, which component was the radio and the baseband, it was closely coupled. It was not open. So now this RU, radio unit, and distributed unit and CU got introduced. And between RU and TU, which is called front hall, it's really where the Open RANs focus on. And other side, the DU CU interface, F1 mid hall, that's a front hall, mid hall, is the two key focus area for Open RAN, where the specs has been evolved, and now this is being introduced. So the RAN network, which was a single one box solutions, was coming from the one proprietary, one vendor. Now it's going to be multi-vendor solutions, and there will be SI as well who can integrate. You can choose the best of breed kind of products, and they can integrate and deliver to mobile networks to bring your flexibility and the multiple ecosystem of the vendors. How it will going to place in the networks? So this is the classic way how the networks will be deployed. So there will be legacy network always, because the classic RAN is deployed in thousands of the sites. So they will be there, RRU, BBU will be coexist. But Open RAN can come where the DUCU might come in the co-located with the site, or it can be aggregated, and it's a aggregation location. And you can have other options where your edge cloud you can use, and you can virtualize your DUCU. If you are using the cloud RAN infrastructures, you can virtualize CU, DU, and it can be distributed as per network size and requirement. There will, of course, different interfaces requirement will be in different architecture will be transport requirement will be different. There will be a lot of fiber requirement might come in, but yes, as 5G need to be adopted, there will be no choice to bring more fiber in the networks. I'll move to next slide. So where are the key impact areas I see in the network perspective? So if you ORAN in the center, so these are the 5 key blocks which I have just put in here, that there will SRAN impact on the SRAN, there is synchronization impact in the networks, there are interoperabilities, there is transport and security. So these are the 5 areas where the key impacts will come. I'll just touch upon very briefly one by one. So let us see what is happening on the SRAN. So currently, the single multi-purpose platforms where supports for multi-technology in the same hardware, software, and in any deployment, the current sites, you will have 2G, 4G, 3G all together in that site. But what we see in the Open RAN currently, mostly supports are coming towards NR, of course, there's a 5G, new generation radios, and as on a 4G LTE. But there is a missing currently some aspects, that's a 2G, as well as, because 3G might be, may not be going forward will be required. It is getting shut down most of the market, anywhere as well as in Indian market. But NB-IoT and 2G will be some more years. Especially 2G will exist for some more years. So we have to see that how even this SRAN supports comes on the ORAN platform. That's very critical for at least Indian context where you deploy all this technology together in the single sites. The next area I'll see synchronization. So generally we use GPS and our PTP servers for synchronization. And being one box, one solution, it was very easy in classic RANs to adopt this synchronizations, which are fed from either central server or GPS, any you can use on all the sites. But here, where the typical cloud servers are being used and simply IT servers being used, we see there is challenges and impacts basically on the synchronization requirements. So synchronization approaches shall be similar to what we are currently available in traditional to deliver traditional KPIs. So it's important to that the same cloud infrastructure IT server also has the equal capability to deliver same kind of synchronization in the networks. Coming on the interoperability, we see currently, if you see that there's a multi-vendor solution is coming in the same box. Like for example, if you take the DU itself, you might have the chassis from somebody else, one vendor, NIC card from vendor B, process chipset from some vendor C, and even GPS from vendor. So there's a multi-vendors are coming in the same box. So there should be a predefined configuration. You must to start for OpCos, because if it is so much fragmented, it's very difficult to see that how the performance will get delivered and how you will choose and pick up and make sure this DU, whatever is expected to deliver, it will deliver. So this is we see there's a challenge, and it has to be very, very clearly specified who and what will be used where, and a clarification has to come, which can make Open RAN more successful. I'll move to next slide. So on the impact on the transport, of course, that will be very big because it depends how you're going to place your DUCU depending on your network architecture. If you putting DUCU, your transport requirement, backhaul requirement will be different if you're putting together. And if you're splitting DUCU, your requirement is going to be different. So the transport network will be completely is going to be retransformed, and it is going to be most stringent requirement going to come, because you need different, if you DUCU and RU are splitted, your latency requirement, your backhaul requirement is totally changing what is currently is getting delivered simply by the CPRI cable in the BBU and RU. So there's going to be whole transformation in your transport network, and as this will also drive how you take forward transport network. So based on your deployments and different configuration, because here it's a lot of flexibility is there, how you will place your DUCU, it can be aggregation level, it can be site level, it can be bit level. So depending on those, your transport network has to be restructured. On security, once you're getting open interface, so of course the vulnerability will be will come in, and I've listed different interfaces. You can see there's a very a lot of interfaces are there, and there are between nodes, and the security mechanism also is different. Like for E1 X1 backhaul, it's a largely NDS IPsec, but there is still an open front backhaul, work in progress, I see. And then O1, E2, and A1, OT, all different workers planned. So there are multiple interfaces where the different security requirement mechanism very different. And so security aspects also has to be looked in, because till now the security is more or less was limited to the core networks, where the open interfaces were was tightly coupled. But now it's extending up to ORAN, because with the cloud infrastructure, with the open interfaces coming in, and there's a between CU, a lot of servers are coming in, and those interfaces security is going to be very critical. What are the key expectations from OPCOs? I see there's a be realistic in competition. When we say be realistic competition, we're talking about the traditional suppliers, where the currently RAN is being supplied. So you have to be parity in terms of traditional supplier, post capex reduction, and better TCO, SRAN functionality, which I talked about. The plug and play functionality for various hardwares, because you taking the multiple hardware, and it's from general purpose hardware using, so it has to plug and play functionality. And hardware and OS agnostic software piece, you have maybe different OS as the OpenStack software being used as a middleware. So all the software, application software which is coming in, it has to be agnostic with the or your OpenStack. With any OpenStack can be used, and any hardware it can be used. The product point of view, there should be high capacities, which is currently we see there's some challenges. So very high power requirement on the RAN when you use the multi-carrier on the same spectrum. It has to be seen that high capacity is available. Concurrent support of 4G and 5G on the radio DUs, 64T, 64R MIMO supports, of course, scale up economics. And the TDD functionality we see in the current ORAN, though we see there's a lot of steps has been moved forward on FDD layer, but there is still TDD layer has to be catch up by the ORAN suppliers and ORAN software and even hardware radios. Functionality point of and feature, I think dynamic spectrum sharing is very important, because spectrum is going to be scarce resources, where the same spectrum is going to be used for multiple purpose between both 4G and 5G, because and as we going to adopt the NSA architecture, non-standalone architecture, and the 5G, where 4G and 5G has to work in conjunction. So DSS is going to be very critical. Break and SON functionalities just need to be built on top of it. We talked about radio intelligent controller and dual IPv6 and IPv4 supports, and even in NB-IoT. NB-IoT also is the very key features requirement on the 4G and 5G platforms to really serve the IoT, which IoT still need to be at least in Indian market has to take off. But this is important components to be available in the RAN networks. So not every gain will come without pain. So this is our experience. We have did some trial already with ORAN. There is one cluster we are currently operating with a few sites. So it was just my experience. I'm not scaring the team here, but there are some challenges what we have seen. I just brought it here on the here. That's reliability and robustness is very important. We have seen multiple patches coming in, and then we could make the networks to be come at par to the traditional RAN equivalents. Virtualization, security aspects, complex automations, and of course we talked about interoperability. So these are few challenges which is still open on the ORAN, because this platform is just evolving, and hope all the players who's pushing towards ORAN and which is really working hard and to make successful the ORAN, they will take care of this all challenges. So this is the operator's view. I think they are all aware, and we keep on exchanging the information notes with them, and hope they will incorporate this. So thanks. This is, I think, my last slide. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. Uh, Rajesh explained how the Voda idea doing the experiment with various vendors and his difficulties, what is he facing during the trial. I'm sure the vendors will take care about that, and soon they can use the ORAN Open RAN platform. We move to the next speaker, Dr. Nilesh P. Dopte, Senior Vice President, Network Planning and Engineering, Reliance Jio. Nilesh, over to you. Nilesh?
Just a moment, let me
Yeah,
share.
sure.
Hope you are able to see the screen.
Not yet. Kayur, please help Nilesh to share the screen. Yes, it's coming.
Nilesh,
Yes.
can you
Yeah.
please share your screen as well?
Yeah. We can see.
Okay. So good morning, everybody.
Nilesh, sir, can you please share your webcam?
Yes, let me.
No. Then the screen sharing is ending when he's sharing the camera. Kayur?
You can share the screen, sir.
Is it coming now?
No. You need to share the screen again. It disappeared. Yes. Yes, Nilesh, go ahead.
Yeah. So good morning, everybody. Respected Chief Guest Gupta sir, Ramnathan Rapchandran sir, and all the speakers from the industry. First, I think I would like to present how the scenario of mobile industry is moving. We can meet our customer requirements. If you look at the growth of traffic, say over last 6-7 years, we see that worldwide traffic, data traffic has grown by 800%, which puts a lot of demand at the operator end in terms of building this capacity, delivering the throughput that is required at the customer end, and at the same time meeting the customer experience in terms of throughput, delays. Every week we see, or every month we see new kind of applications which are getting launched, which has its own demands of KPIs that needs to be taken care. We have to ensure that the customers are happy. All those are the basic needs at the end of operator, which needs to be looked into. When we see overall growth that is happening in India market, we see that in last 1 year itself, we have grown by almost 26%. And in coming years, we see that this is going to grow at much faster rate. We definitely need a solution which is 5G and also something which is cost effective, which can ensure that our overall capex is less. We have overall TCO which is manageable or which is less. At the same time, we have to also take care that our O&M is simple, totally automated, and overall OPEX can be reduced. What we see most important and a lot of learnings from the COVID era, I will say, during lockdown, the customer behavior changes. As overnight the customer behavior changes, we see a lot of change happening in traffic pattern. So there has to be a network which is highly adaptive, in the sense that we should be able to take care of change in traffic, which is based on customer requirement. The movement of traffic that we see happening from the urban area to the rural area, or vice versa, when it happens, unlocking happens. This puts a lot of challenges onto the network and overall operations. How do we manage all these scenarios? What we have seen during the COVID era is, when the lockdown happens, everything moves from outdoor traffic to indoor traffic. This particular change in traffic pattern puts a lot of, kind of stress onto the network. We see that different layers or different bands that we are operating, they get loaded in different ways. So there has to be a mechanism in the system which can help us in balancing this load. There has to be functionalities, algorithm inbuilt into the system, which will help us in improving the overall user experience, whether the customer remains indoor or outdoor. We should be able to deliver good experience to him in spite of whether whatever is the situation, whether he is indoor or outdoor. And I think lot many things are now coming into the system, and as we move forward, we will see in the Open RAN how Open RAN is addressing some of these challenges. Coming to kind of managing this capacity, as I mentioned that as we grow, we need to add a lot of hardware to the network because of the volume that is getting demanded in the network. We should be able to roll out our solutions quite fast, new sites. So the solution should be such that which is modular. We can go close to the customer premises and try to give him service which is fast enough so that our customers are happy. At the same time, when it comes to some algorithms in the radio, so that we can give the best experience in terms of whatever apps the customer using, we should be able to do that with the help of all the applications that are sitting into the RAN system. India is growing very fast, and we see that we need a solution which is more adaptive, which is open, which is low cost, and we should be able to meet our customer requirement so that they are happy, and it is delivered at a much reasonable rate, because we have a big volume, rural part of India, where they can afford services at certain rate. That has to be taken care. So at an operator level, it becomes very important that we maintain a solution, or we use a solution which is good on TCO and very good on OPEX reduction also. And when we evaluate Open RAN as one of the solutions, we find that most of our requirements are getting addressed. Maybe there are, total ecosystem for that is getting developed. And over a period of time, we will definitely have an end-to-end solution through Open RAN, which will deliver the customer experience which we are looking forward to as an operator. So I will move to the next slide, which basically gives a kind of flexible architecture that we have in Open RAN. I think the most important and good thing that has happened is eCPRI, the open front haul, which has come into effect, I will say. And today we have multiple vendors on RU, which can give us this solution. And with that, I think we have multiple vendors who can supply RU to us, and which will bring in a multi-vendor scenario and overall cost reduction in terms of the radio deployment in the networks. Going forward, I think with the DU and RU, CU also, which is now can be a hardware which we can use off the shelf, the COTS hardware that is available, and put software from multiple vendors there. A kind of ecosystem that already exists in the industry can be used, and we can have that solution going at a very reasonable or cost-effective manner. The challenge which we see here is a kind of X2, which with our existing vendors interfacing, the 4G RAN to the 5G RAN there becomes a very big challenge, and a lot of work still needs to be done. And I think from the Open RAN Alliance side, effort has to be on continuously so that all the incumbent vendors or the existing players should open their X2 so that we can have a total integration of the RAN network with the existing technologies, let it be 2G, 3G, and definitely 4G, which is available with X2, so that the overall 4G, 5G network works together as a single network, and we are able to provide a good experience when a user is moving from 5G to 4G or 4G to 5G based on coverage and capacity or the services requirement. I think a lot of work still has to happen on the X2 interface, and unless the X2 interface gets opened, I think the success will not come in the field of ORAN 100%. We cannot have an independent layer of 5G to work and a 4G layer work separately. I think that scenario seems to be impractical. X2, I think, is something which has to, has to be opened for all the vendors so that we have a kind of integrated network and they can work together, and we deliver the required performance and quality to our customers. Coming to other network elements in ORAN, I think which are very important, and I think which is nothing but the innovation. I will say great innovation that that is there in the form of RIC, or service and management orchestration. I think these both network functionalities, I think, are very great. They will also bring in a lot of new vendors who will have the skills on radio technology. If they can build some algorithms which are very specific to a kind of scenario in the network, so as to provide a better customer experience or better service quality. I think RIC is very important in terms of its functionality. It works as almost a near real time I will say optimizer, or a real time RIC. I think there is a lot of opportunity here when we look at overall ecosystem of other components in the market. I think we have many vendors who are working on it, and they can supply us the required hardware as well as software. RIG becomes more specific to a particular problem, and through XApps, a lot of vendors can come forward who have good RF skills, who understand radio well, come up with algorithms which are very specific to a particular location or a particular area, so that we can deliver good customer experience with whatever resources we have in the radio. As Rajesh ji also mentioned, each site comes with some kind of a capacity. There is a limitation in terms of resources that is available. We have lot many customers getting served through a site or a sector which provides, this consists of multiple layers in terms of different bands. Everything has to work in a cohesive way and deliver a performance. there has to be specific algorithm for scenarios which exist in the field, so that with the given resource we are able to deliver good experience to our customers. And I think the RIC, real-time RIC, near real-time RIC, I will say, is one of the best thing that is part of Open RAN, and we should explore it fully and leverage it so that we can deliver the best experience. But at the same time, we have to see multiple vendors coming forward in XApp's domain, which can give us those specific algorithms or those apps which we can use for a specific scenario and give us the best productivity of our side, best efficiency of our side, and we can then give good service to our customers. I think SMO, service management and orchestration, I think we can say it is a good solution that is part of Open RAN. With this, we are able to kind of improve on our O&M. It works with a lot of data analytics. We have AI, ML embedded into it, which kind of tune our models so as to deliver a particular service in a kind of scenario. I think with this effort, we will be able to optimize our O&M. It is a good automation which can help us in delivering good network performance, and we look forward to this particular solution in near future getting operational into the networks. Overall, I find Open RAN to be meeting almost all objectives which a operator is looking forward to, and with the help of ORAN at a very reasonable cost, or I will say overall TCO, we will be able to deliver good cost-effective service and good service to our customers. I think moving on to the next slide. If you look at the ecosystem that is getting developed, and as I mentioned already, that I see the industry is moving in the right direction. Today, we have multiple RU vendors in the market, which are new. They were never there in 2G, 3G or 4G time. It was all getting dominated by the key players from different part of the world. But today, with ORAN happening and all the interfaces getting open and overall disaggregation happen, we see a lot of radio vendors coming forward. They are small vendors. They are able to deliver this solution at a reasonable cost, and which can do a lot of meaningful deployment in the network at a much faster rate and meet our requirement. Same is true for the DU as well as CU hardware. I think it is a common hardware which is also used in other part of industries, IT, which can be leveraged for telecom also. They are available at low cost, can be used as a part of cloud, and we can build up our networks with high capacity and better performance using these hardware that is available. RAN software also. Earlier, when we used to, or even today, the end-to-end radio solution is coming from one particular vendor. With the ORAN coming, we can have all mix and match, a multi-vendor scenario in the system, and it is possible to kind of deliver whatever is required as per the operator's need. I think with so many components in the system, I think system integration now becomes a very important part of ORAN. Working with so many vendors, first for different network elements, and then we have different software working on it. We have, as we move forward, different software releases coming in, overall life cycle of the system. new software patches coming in. I think system integration is the biggest challenge which I see when working with ORAN going forward. Even today, when we have any new software release, it has to go through multiple testings, both in the lab. We have to go through a lot of field test for a single vendor for any change that we do in the software. When we have multiple vendors and a scenario where multiple components are getting controlled by different vendors, system integration, testing, ensuring that we deliver the required output at the radio end or the performance end, I think we see it as the biggest challenge when we roll out 5G networks using Open RAN as a concept. I think going forward, this has also given, I will say, an opportunity to chipset vendors, because as the new hardware, both on the radio side as well as on the digital side, is getting produced. Earlier, all chipsets, most of it used to be a proprietary ones coming from the vendors. They used to have their in-house chips to produce their equipment. I think that space is getting opened for smaller, vendors who are supplier of chipset, and the new vendors who have now come up with this solution can use them. So it is a good opportunity for new vendors to get into it. On the RAN optimization, as I mentioned, that XAP is a big opportunity for the industry. We see that companies who have good skills on the radio side, algorithm sides, and if they can come up with apps which can produce a RF apps which can be loaded into RIC, and we deliver specific solution for a area, for a site, for, I think this is a big opportunity, and this ecosystem should develop quickly so that we can leverage it and deliver services to our customers at a very good cost. I think overall life cycle of the system, I already mentioned about it. I think this is a big challenge, because any change that will happen, any hardware upgrade or software upgrade, working with different vendors becomes challenging and needs a lot of testing. This needs to be somewhere controlled so that we work with some limited vendors and ensure that there is no major challenge on this side. So on the multi-vendor scenario, I think we are definitely going to get some cost advantages. We are going to get benefit of the innovation that is going to happen. Automation will definitely help us in reducing network complexity, deliver our O&M requirement at a reasonable cost. We will have simplified and high-speed networks getting built with all the provisions that is there in Open RAN. I want to also highlight the challenges. I think today, when we are talking about reducing the cost onto the RAN side for Open RAN, I think this will only happen when there are volumes. All these vendors have definitely spent a lot of money on their R&D. They have come with new products. They do not have any significant market as of now. The product is new. There is a cost which they have incurred already. And if they have to deliver a radio product or any other product, let it be DU or RU, I think unless there are big volumes, they will not be able to beat the incumbent equipment suppliers. So I find this as a big challenge. We are talking about cost reduction, but cost reduction will not happen unless the Open RAN vendors have big volumes to deliver. One more big challenge which I see in terms of getting the 5G ORAN getting deployed is how do we integrate it with the existing network. So I mentioned about X2 is one of the big challenge. I think interop with other technologies or the existing technologies, let it be 4G or 3G, I think this is a biggest challenge that I see in terms of ORAN getting deployed on ground in big volumes. One more important thing, I already mentioned system integration, where I see a kind of opportunity both for vendors, where they can have new businesses coming up in the form of system integration as a company, and they support end-to-end deployment of ORAN, take care of end-to-end integration, and also own the network performance. I think it is a big opportunity for the industry to have system integration as one of the businesses. For the network operator side, I think I will still say it is a big challenge working with so many vendors, taking the looking at the lifetime situation of this new solution in terms of ORAN, managing it and delivering overall performance to the customer. So a lot of work, I think, still has to happen so that we can make ORAN a 100% practical scenario and roll it out at a mass scale. With that, I will stop and over to Shashi.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective on the basis of Open RAN. Now we move to the next speaker, Shri Sunil K. Gupta, Senior DDG DOT, the former Secretary TRAI. Sir, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me thank Mr. TV and Mr. Shashidharan to give me an opportunity to share my views in this very august gathering. First of all, this is a very timely organized program on Open RAN. And therefore, I once again congratulate the organizers for this, because it provides you an opportunity to discuss what actually is Open RAN, what are the policy initiatives required, what are the advantages, and what are the points of concern, which all are very, very important if we really want to move further on that particular area. I am really thankful that I have a galaxy of speakers before me who have already touched upon a very critical issues relating to Open RAN. That makes my discussion very simple, and I will not like to touch the jargons what has been already told by various speakers. I will just like to touch upon Open RAN on a very simple, understandable language where people can easily appreciate the issues related with Open RAN, the need of Open RAN, what actually it is, and where we have to look forward, particularly as Mr. Shashidharan was telling, that what are the regulatory and policy challenges or the initiatives required on that particular area. So first question which comes to mind of everybody, what is this particular thing called Open RAN? Of course, there are highly knowledgeable experts are there in this particular discussion, and I take their permission to discuss this particular issue in a very, very low language. It's basically open, interoperable, standard-based virtual radio network or virtual radio access network. So once we say open, it means the different modules can be integrated, and it is standard-based because there are well-defined standards which has to be used, and it's a virtual network. Now, virtual network makes things very different than what we are dealing with at present, but I will touch upon that particular area a bit later. So let us compare with the traditional network which we are having. The traditional network is a end-to-end integrated network, of course, based on the standards, which is giving a well-defined quality of service all the time. Now, the system is not capable to moderate or reconfigure itself depending on the change in the quality of service requirement at different point of time or for different consumers. So it's a very I would say, rigidly defined network which is existed as of now, and so were our requirements. We were also not having very different versatile requirements where we can say that every point of time my requirements are going to change. Since they are provided by some big vendors, there is some sort of, if I can say, slow pace of innovation. There was some sort of high cost of upgradation of such networks, because you are rigidly bind with one particular vendor, and therefore your negotiation power was slightly reduced. Of course, there were security concerns. If there are certain security loopholes are there, they continue to be there. And in some extent, it was hampering to adopt a new technology very quickly, because you had to very much depend on the existing network. So there were a lot of problems in the existing network. So why did we not talk about Open RAN earlier, and why we have just wake up right now and started talking Open RAN all the time? The reason is, and somebody has very rightly pointed out, it's all the game of advantage versus disadvantages. What actually we are going to gain, and as a result, what actually we are going to lose out of it. The main driver of talking of Open RAN is that our network requirements are not static. It has become more dynamic. We have got various applications. We have got various type of requirement. We talk about network slicing. We talk about individuals' different requirement at different point in time. We want our network to be sensitive to understand changing requirement of a particular person and configure to provide it so that seamlessly we can meet the requirement of our consumers. That was not the requirement with the earlier network. That is where we are moving on in the 5G. And if that is the requirement, my network has to be capable to handle that particular thing. And that is why when we talk about this, we had to have a network which can learn our consumer behavior, which can predict the network requirement, which can reconfigure the network, and therefore provide the required service to our consumers. And that will be the game changer. That will be the winning technology. And that is why we are looking into Open RAN. Now, if I had to do all these things, what I require is, I require that it should be able to work very effectively with artificial intelligence and machine learning languages. I had to learn the behavior of my consumers. Then only I will be able to provide that. So what type of advantage I'm going to give? I think it will be slight repetition, because it has already been touched upon by my speakers earlier. But it will give an advantage of improving the efficiency of the network. That's very important issue. It reduces the capex and opex. It reduces the cost of the network. It increases the diversity of the suppliers. Of course, I will touch upon that whether this diversity will be good or bad. Better network security, ability to utilize machine-to-machine learning systems, and support AI for better network utilization. Now, if we look at 5G is going to be having massive footprint. It's not that one particular node or one particular device would be able to give a very larger coverage. It's not only for communication between individuals. It's going to be completely changing the way we think, the way we work, the way things are achieved, and therefore its footprint is going to be massive. Therefore, as far as business of suppliers are concerned, in initial years, I completely agree that there may be certain concerns whether they will get the appropriate return on their investment or not. But in long term, I am quite confident that the suppliers would get their penny very well, because demands will be very, very high and will not be possible to be met by few companies, either Indians or globally. Now, what are the problems then? See, The biggest problem here is more efforts would be required for integration. And why I am telling that? Unless we take some corrective actions, it will be very difficult to integrate smaller modules to give the broader output of the network. End-to-end security has to be ensured, which is again a very big challenge. And unless this security is ensured, I don't think we will be permitted to roll out our networks. Then continued support of a small vendor is another challenge. Today you can have the equipment of particular vendor. How can you ensure that his support continues for longer period till that equipment is in your network? And managing versions upgrade. There are different equipments at different point of time, their version upgrade will come. How would you ensure that different versions are compatible with each other and you are able to provide end-to-end unhindered services to the consumers? So if I look at what are the focus areas where we had to concentrate, the first is clear and unambiguous definition of standard interface. We are defining a standard interface, but it has to be very clear and unambiguous. Better understanding and country-wide uniformity in use of the optional parameter prescribed in the standard. I am very much apprehensive on this particular thing because you see any standards which have been defined, there are mandatory parameters, there are optional parameters. Now, use of optional parameter by different vendors is very, very different. So how this will result into end-to-end integration when we are going for Open RAN, unless we are very, very careful in defining these parameters at the starting of the production and ensure that this provides end-to-end connectivity. Establishment of test labs to certify compliance with standard interfaces, because I would say I'm complying to the standards, but who will certify that whether I comply or not? If a service provider purchases my equipment and it doesn't match with the other one, who he has to blame on and how he can rely on that particular thing, that's another area. Then focused approach on network integration. How network has to be integrated so that there are not much of the things, as some people have pointed out, that network integration would be a challenge. Then well-defined strategy to trace security related issues. If there is a breach of security, how to pinpoint the module or the modules where there has been certain problems. Then robust mechanism of maintenance and troubleshooting is another key area which requires to be looked into before we can adopt for Open RAN. I am quite sure that there are very knowledgeable people in this particular webinar, and they would have taken care of many of these issues already. But I think some light on these issues would be very much required to delineate the doubts people are having in their mind as to how to move on the Open RAN. In India, if we look at from policy point of view, we are adopting the posture of technology neutrality. Therefore, TSPs are free to adopt any technology within the prescribed framework of TEC and the license. So I don't think there is any regulatory embargo or from that point of view licensing embargo which stops not to use the Open RAN. It's very open. I'm happy today that you have given me opportunity to talk on this particular issue and share my views. Once again, thank you all of you to give me opportunity to hear me. I'm sure that the remaining sessions would be focusing on various other important issues of Open RAN, and as a India would be able to do much better on these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shri S.K. Gupta ji. Thank you very much. As you said, regulatory is open and the policy is open for the Open RAN. That's a fantastic wording. We move to the next speaker, Manish Gange, the head network R&D Bharti. Manish, over to you.
Sure. Just give me a second. I'll upload my
Manish sir, can I request you to share your webcam, please?
Yes, just give me a minute. I'll just upload my presentation and then we'll start.
Sanjay, you can be ready for the next speaker after Manish. You're mute, Sanjay.
Yeah, Shashi, thanks. My presentation is with Cure, so I request him to.
Okay. So once Manish is over, next is yours. Yes, good.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope my slide is visible.
Yes, Manish. Go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk here, Shashi, and the rest of the organizing team. My job is actually fairly simple today. The reason it has become simpler is that all my three panelists before me, have really illustrated the reason why Open RAN, has come into the being, and what challenges we have, what opportunities we have. I would really like to focus on a singular aspect of this Open RAN, and that aspect is more related to change and adapting to the change. This is not incremental change that we are seeing in the industry today, especially from the operator's perspective. This is a step change that we are looking at in terms of how things are done. If we really have to draw a parallel between what change that we're seeing today on the radio access network, probably you need to look at semiconductor industry in 20-30 years back. 30 years back, the semiconductor industry used to work in a most integrated manner that one can imagine. The same people will define what problem needs to be solved. Same people will define how it needs to be solved. Then they will solve the problem. Then they will create the manufacturing facility to create the solution out of it, and then they will sell as well. This was completely integrated industry, and obviously that was stymieing the innovation that you could possibly see, and it was not visible upfront to people, right? But there was a change that took place. The change that happened was, people actually split the manufacturing aspect of semiconductor from the design aspect, and that's how the whole fabulous semiconductor industry born. And that industry has changed everything that we see today. The number of new innovations that are coming into the electronic ecosystem is because there are many people are able to conceptualize a problem and solve it. And even though they do not have the ability to manufacture it, there are specialized industries that have come around to be able to manufacture it and manufacture it cost effectively rather than making it very prohibitive. We are looking at a similar step change in the RAN. There are two pillars of this change, right? And I wouldn't call Open RAN to be the only reason. Actually, if you look at it, 5G as a technology and as an opportunity is a step change from 4G and earlier technologies, and my previous speakers alluded to that as well. The reason that we're saying 5G is in a step change is because for the first time, this technology is looking at users first, not the technology first. We are talking about applications, use cases. What is it that we need to solve? And then say, how does the network solve it? That's a very different way of looking at how the networks are going to be built. And that's the reason why I said this is a step change. And step change, especially in the minds of the operators like us. People in our organizations for 30, 40 years have been building networks in a specific manner, operating them in a specific manner. This is an opportunity or a change that we are saying will require us to change internally, change our processes, change our systems, change the way we buy, change the way we operate the network. In fact, people have to upskill themselves. In this parlance, right? When we talk about when we deploy the RAN, we will deploy it in 3 different manners, and the slide is only indicative of what change that we're looking at. But fundamentally, what we're saying is, the software engineers that used to be software engineers will have to become the operations engineers. Operations engineers who used to deploy things have to really start to think like software engineers. And the reason that I'm saying is because the boundaries of the functions is blurring very, very much. And I think, again, right, we can draw the parallel from the other industry. The industry that we have seen has come up in the last 15, 20 years, right? What we call the web scalers, what we call the social media giants. The way they operate, right? The way they roll out their software, the way they satisfy the consumer demand is something that we need to learn from. Some of the social media sites roll out the software 6 times, 7 times a day, right? And why do they do it? The reason they do it is because there is something that they want users to be able to getting access to really, really quickly. And if we really look at that and put it in contrast with how the telecom networks are done, we used to change the software on the network probably once in a year, right? That's the kind of change that we are looking at, from once in a year to probably multiple times in a year. It's a very big change that we're looking to do. And I'm saying that these challenges are there and for us to solve. Now, operators cannot solve all these problems themselves. Operators need help, and when I say help, it in the form of people thinking differently. So if we really look at in this diagram, what we used to do on the leftmost side was the traditional way we used to build the network. The distributed RAN was the norm. From there on, we are saying that now, because of the new way of doing things on 5G, there is a strong need for us to think about doing things in a more software manner, doing more, agility, bringing in more agility into the way we roll out capability and features and new features. So there is a need for us to say, how do we now build the hardware or the network so that we can actually roll things out faster? If you had everything integrated, hardware and software, you would actually be limited by your ability to send people onto the ground and change things into the field, right? You start with, say, for example, and just a very crude example, that you had the capability to service 500 customers from your existing product. If you needed to move them to 1,000 customers, you needed to change the whole hardware. And then that means you send people to the ground to upgrade yourself to be able to support more users. You are basically in this age where we're saying that we need to be able to do this on a click of a button, that I should be able to scale within a certain limit, right? And I'm just saying that please don't imagine this scalability to be unlimited, but the scalability has to be thought about it when you do the system design. So what I'm saying is that this change of requirement and the way users are behaving, it'll ask all our existing partners, right, the existing DRAN vendors, to change the way. And then I'm seeing that there is a move towards moving from the distributed hardware-centric, tightly coupled network to a cloud-based network. That's what we're talking about, virtualized, cloud-based softwareization of the RAN components. What Open RAN is doing is essentially making those interfaces open so that all these components can individually come from different set of people. And that's a huge liberation. And I call it is that in many different ways, Open RAN is actually democratizing the networks. It's democratizing the ecosystem in telecom. We are very limited ecosystem. We have a very limited set of people thinking of solving the problem statements that the users are posing. We really need to expand that. And then when we talk about doing Open RAN, that's an opportunity that is showing up. So very simple. If you open up the interfaces, you make sure that two products, two software, two hardware, a hardware and a software, they talk to each other in a standard manner. And the software world, especially the again the web scalers and the new age of the softwares know this whole API concept, application programmable interface, is a very standard way of making people talk to each other. We never did this. We never did this in the telecom world. This is the first time that we are saying that we need to talk in a very standard manner to each other. And that's what is ORAN's work is. If you really look at, why are we even needing an organization like ORAN? If we really had 3GPP doing this job, right? 3GPP had defined certain way of doing things. They define the standard which everybody adheres to, but they leave the interfaces part of this whole, standardization open, right? And that leaves too much to be desired, because a certain number of or certain set of players only then play in that game, because there is a muscle, there is a size, there is a volume that drives some of that decision making. So as soon as you open up things, it is basically opening up the field for everybody. Now you can have only radio focused companies come around. People who know how to do the RF design really well can actually continue to build different kinds of radios. And mind you, the way world is, right, every country practically has its own set of bands, right? The spectrum is so fragmented that every country has got its own set of bands. Within those bands, certain set of capability in terms of how much of the spectrum is available in a certain segment of network and what is available in other places. There is a lot more need for many more companies to come in and start to solve the band issues. Why should I have to do a new customization for a new band, for a new spectrum every time? Why are we not using the software-defined radios more efficiently, where in concept they have been existing for many, many years? The reason that they didn't happen is that everybody has a compulsion, and every organization has a prioritization of what they can innovate on or how much money they invest into each of this. Once you open this up, you're actually letting far more people look into this problem statement and solving it in the most innovative manner. Look at the DU and CU, right? The moment you talked about, you disintegrate hardware from the software, we said the hardware for the DU and CU can be commercial off the shelf. Simple x86 based servers can run the same workload that you were needing to build some specialized ASICs to run. And those ASICs were all closed. They're all intellectual property of a few people. The moment you open this up, now people are talking about, oh yeah, this is an x86 architecture available. I can build an accelerator card based on FPGA and ESC or any other function that will do the FEC exploration better than somebody else. You're really creating a competition here. You're really allowing people to come up and start to solve problems, in this domain now, which was otherwise completely closed. Nobody was solving this problem other than 4, 5, 6 companies in the world. That's what you would, Open RAN is going to enable. Now, obviously, when you open things up, the challenges come, and the challenges have been outlined. Mr. Gupta talked about it very nicely. Is that yes, everybody can build their own stuff. Who will make sure that the two guys are saying that I will talk to you, but you're really talking to me correctly on the same interfaces that you need to. So there is a need for us to be able to build those kind of capabilities, right? That you will be able to certify. I mean, all over the world, right? I draw the example again from the hardware. The EMI EMC capability of the hardware, right? That you say that you will not cause interference to others and you will basically, cut the interference coming from the others, is a very standard definition of how you basically do things. Who certifies that your EMI and EMC are completely aligned to what the standard body is asking? There are independent labs, and hundreds of thousands of them have come around, which are basically certifying that you bring your equipment, I will certify and tell you. I am seeing that this ecosystem is going to grow. There will be a number of people who will come and say, I will validate, I will do this for you. And you basically bring your equipment, I'll certify and tell you you are compliant to ORAN or CGPP or XYZ. So I look at this change as a huge opportunity that is in front of us. And I don't want to underplay the challenges that my colleagues have, industry colleagues have said. I mean, they all exist. They all exist. And the biggest, I would say the victims of that change are the operators, right? Because we are the ones who have to learn to change. And change we will, right? And that's what I want to tell, that this adoption, this scaling up, this volume build-up will all happen if the more and more people are looking to embrace this change, because this change is going to happen irrespective whether we support it today or not, because this is the right thing to do. This is allowing everybody to innovate. In fact, I'm expecting that this change will get adopted by all our DRAM players. Okay, all our existing DRAM players will adopt this because this is the right thing to do. It hasn't happened today because it is not convenient to do it today. But over a period of time, it will become convenient and people will adopt. And that's the time frame. And that's the end game that I'm looking at. That's open, everybody plays fair. Everybody has opportunity to innovate. And the best innovations win. And the best cost will win. That's the challenge, or that's the opportunity of the Open RAN that I see in front of us. That's all that I wanted to talk to you guys about.
Okay, Manish. Thank you very much, Manish, for your presentation. I do agree with you. Challenges will be there, and we need to overcome. Moving to the next speaker, although we are running 10-15 minutes late. Move to the next speaker, Sanjay Bakaya, the country head, India Regional Vice President, India and South Asia, Mavenir. Sanjay, over to you. You're mute.
Yeah, thanks, Shashi. And good morning to everyone attending this session today. At the outset, I thank you as well as our chief guest, Sunil Gupta, Senior DDG, DOT and former Secretary to TRAI, TV Ramachandran, President, Broadband India Forum, for very encouraging words in his welcome address, and our industry friends, media partners, and colleagues attending this virtual conference. What has been already said by earlier speakers, and both the challenges as well as the opportunity has been very well articulated by Senior DDG Sunil Gupta ji sir, and the way the opportunity out there for us by Manish in the preceding to my presentation today. In my presentation, I will cover the impact of Open RAN on telecom ecosystem and role of government in Open RAN. And I'll try my best to not be repetitive of already my friends and colleagues from the industry have said. Next slide, please. Before I get into the specifics of what I'm going to touch upon on the Open RAN side of it, I just want to give a brief overview of Mavenir. Mavenir is building the future networks through our vision, which is to have single automated software-based network that can run in any cloud environment. Mavenir is industry's only end-to-end cloud-native network software provider, which support more than 250 operators globally in 120 plus countries with over 50% of the world's subscriber traffic. We do that today with global workforce of close to 5,000 employees, out of which we have close to about 3,000 in India. Coming back to our vision statement, which is about having single automated software-based network that can run on any closed environment, or a cloud environment to be precise. So let me break it down for simplicity in three parts. The first part is to have a single network, so which is going all the way to 2G and to what we are building networks today to 5G, and support not just mobile devices, but multitude of device types of today and the future. We are running this in any cloud environment that is having applications that can run in a private, public, edge, or a hypercloud scenario. Last part is about completely in software. As mentioned, earlier, Mavenir is industry's only end-to-end clouds native software provider. So we are not bound by any proprietary hardware, but focused on having software-defined network. Next slide, please. As we all are aware, and it was touched in the earlier presentations, and we have seen it through 90s, that IT applications were hosted on dedicated servers to run individual applications to manage enterprise business. Technology was not evolving so rapidly, and efficiency was not priority in such an environment. It still made business sense with all applications hosted on dedicated hardware and on-prem. Over time, with penetration of broadband, distributed infrastructure-driven scope, cost, complexity, and it became difficult to run business in such an environment. In fact, IT became so complex and cumbersome that it impeded innovation and came in the way of businesses. This problem was eventually solved by virtualization and migrating to the cloud-based solutions. This is exactly the case when it comes to telco networks over the years, built over conventional architecture with EGs deployed by using proprietary application and purpose-built hardware, thus leading to high cost of ownership, complex management, and limited scaling capabilities. Next slide, please. Over time, CSPs have witnessed how IT brings dramatic improvements in business agility and operational efficiency with virtualization and migration to the cloud, making it inevitable for the telcos to follow this already well-proven path. With this vision of Mavenir, we are building future networks, focusing on a single software automated network that runs on any cloud with open, interoperable interfaces, running core, RAN, and other application functions over generic compute instead of purpose-built hardware, and managing these virtualized functions using cloud-native principles. Therefore, open solutions allow for one architecture that addresses legacy networks as well as is 5G ready from day one. Next slide, please. Now, cutting the noise and getting to the heart of the matter, Open RAN is nothing but bringing RAN with open interfaces. This can be also implemented with legacy technology. At the end, it still needs a radio paired with transmit receiver hoisted up a tower, and those components need to talk to baseband unit, which can run on proprietary hardware, general purpose hardware, or a cloud environment. The general purpose hardware or cloud environment are the two options that require open interface. To support ever-increasing demand of bandwidth, reduce latency with cost-optimized solution, operators need an entirely new architecture, and Open RAN promises to offer just that. Open RAN follows 3GPP standards, including architecture and radio interfaces. Open RAN is addressing, and this was touched upon earlier by Manish, is addressing areas of 3GPP which have been left to vendor tweaking that has led to proprietary hardware and software. And what Open RAN does is basically addressing these gaps to enable ecosystem that will foster competition by bringing multiple players for hardware and software, resulting in several options and players to buy and integrate telecom networks for CSPs, thus enhancing the ecosystem of telecom gear space. Next slide, please. As is reflected on the slide, Open RAN ecosystem is growing, and there is a strong support for Open RAN from various standards and advocacy organizations focused on its adoption. And here is a quick overview on that. We have ORAN Alliance, which came into existence in 2018. This is to fill the gap in existing 3GPP specifications. Several MNOs founded the ORAN Alliance to support open and interoperable interface specification. Today, the alliance is led by 28 operators with 240 suppliers participating in it. This was founded in 2016. This is the second main driver whose main objective is deployment of fully programmable RAN solutions based on general purpose processor, COTS, and disaggregated software. In addition to this, in 2020, we got in place the Open RAN Policy Coalition. It's a group of companies formed to promote the Open RAN adoption within the governments and the ecosystem players. Already, we have 58 companies signed up to it as on date. Next slide, please. As we can see here, there has been a noticeable impact of Open RAN on software and hardware ecosystem. In last decade, the competition and choice in the mobile network supply chain has dwindled. Globally, there are now only a very few vendors providing closed proprietary systems, especially in radio access network. Not so surprisingly, many governments have begun pushing for more diversification in vendor supply chain, and many MNOs have been searching for cost-effective alternatives to this closed proprietary system supplied by their existing incumbent vendors. Open RAN has been the answer to these demands by allowing multiple suppliers to compete and provide different sub-components within the RAN. In the recent development at G7, the digital technology ministers have recognized the potential of emerging open and interoperable network infrastructure, leading to significant investments being announced by several G7 nations to build networks of future. Next slide, please. The radio intelligent controller has been designed within ORAN architecture as a separate entity, which provides the possibility to manage the radio resource within the RAN, which was never a possibility before, thus enabling a new software ecosystem around RAN. RIC is split into near real-time and non-real-time RIC. The near real-time application layer opens the door to third-party apps controlling radio resource management and therefore leads to innovation. This is in staggering contrast with traditional closed proprietary RAN development, where only a handful of vendors had access to the RAN feature development. The core algorithms executing in or above the non-real-time RIC will be developed and owned by CSPs. This will further provide the capability to modify RAN behavior by deploying AI and ML-based policies and models optimized to individual business objectives. Next slide, please. Yeah, one of the points which has been coming in many forums and many discussions is, as far as security is concerned, Open RAN deployments have followed best practices in IT integration. Open RAN, from the point of view of security, has a zero trust architecture that's based on continuously analyzing and evaluating the vulnerabilities that may exist in the network. Thus, there is an inherent protection mechanism in the system that allows to mitigate any unwanted risk. To add to this, open interfaces also support virtualized network functions, enabling additional security controls through micro segmentation and containerization inherent to the cloud-based architecture. Very well said by Dish Network's Stephen Bai at the FCC Open RAN Forum Conference in September 2020. It's easier to find the cockroaches when lights are on. That's the opportunity that comes with an open environment. Next slide, please. Yeah, to summarize, Open RAN is ready for deployment with substantial benefits over the existing traditional architectures. We have fast-growing ecosystem and support from various standards and advocacy organizations. A study by NGMN in Europe shows that 80% of the sites carry only 20% of the traffic. Hence, pooling resources could potentially reduce the requirements with significant savings on compute and power. Open RAN is both time and cost efficient in terms of deployment. Operators do not have to wait for customized hardware and set of features to come from a single vendor to start their deployment. Operators can go with whichever vendors who is or are ready with features they need and enable competition between vendors to serve their deployment needs in a timely fashion. Having an Open RAN architecture enables multiple vendors and operators to cooperate, contribute, and innovate while they continue to compete in the newer spaces of business and technology. Next slide, please. Finally, when it comes to role of government of India, due to close and proprietary nature of telecom gear infrastructure, contrary to India's ethos, there has been over-dependence on hardware manufacturing and supply chain in this domain, which for India will continue to be a challenge because of our inherent limitations of silicon, lack of high-end technology, design centers, and other related constraints. Hence, path to become global leader in telecom gear is by using strength of software development and IT skills to our advantage in building the networks of future and commoditizing the hardware. The path to virtualization and cloudification is not new to telecom, as it has been already adapted in IT and core, and now it's time for RAN to follow the same path for obvious reasons. It is a watershed moment for India to become global leader in network equipment provider space by being early adapter of Open RAN with its scale and take leadership position on global map in telecom gear space. We look forward to government policy and decision-making body support to accelerate large-scale Open RAN deployment by using R&D funds to support innovators and mobile operators in adapting Open RAN, create environment for Indian telecom companies, system integrated players to get a level playing field by reviewing dependence on the proprietary hardware. With this, I end my presentation today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you addressing the gathering and talking about what Mavenir is doing on the Open RAN. We move to the next speaker, Dr. Colin, Head of Research Alliances, Nokia, and Chairman of the Board of 5G Infrastructure. Dr. Colin, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction to this event. I appreciate being invited, and I hope I can share at least a view from Nokia, and this might be useful. First, let me try and share my slides. This is always the interesting part, to see if it works.
Technology still have some challenges.
It's always the same. There are so many systems to learn, yes, and they're all a little bit different where the share button is, yeah, and where it works. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, good morning, I think, just about. So I wanted to talk about driving ORAN to commercial reality, because we've talked a lot about what might be the advantages, what might be the disadvantages in the presentations today, and it's all useful information. But we have to remember that we need, or certainly the operators need, to be deploying high quality, reliable networks. Now, Nokia is committed to ORAN. So if you look at who has actually been involved in ORAN, actually in the standardization, Nokia was the first global RAN vendor to be involved in ORAN. We've been there from the start. We were also the first to join the Open RAN Policy Coalition. Indeed, we were the only major vendor to be involved in XRAN, which, those of you with a long memory, was the precursor to ORAN. So we've been involved in this area a long time. And we believe that ORAN is important and ORAN is the future. Nokia is active in all of the ORAN working groups, and we are especially leading both the near real-time RIC, which was mentioned in the previous presentation, and the Open Fronthaul group. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We are investing in ORAN. We believe it has a future. So the ORAN and the vRAN story, if we can bring them together then we believe Nokia can provide the best performance at the lowest total cost of operation in an open multi-vendor environment. Forgive me, that's quite a difficult word to say. In an open multi-vendor environment. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make ORAN and vRAN a commercial reality. We're trying to provide a world-class network to deploy, which actually provides all the KPIs and all the needs we have in terms of robustness, security, and performance. If we look at the groups we're involved in, you can see that we are active in all of the working groups in ORAN, and many of them we are leading or co-chairing. And if you look at the contributions in ORAN standardization, how much material, how much work all the companies or organizations are investing in ORAN Alliance, the #1 company for contributions is Nokia. So ORAN provides a compelling view for the future, but we do need to make sure that we apply that technology in the right way and at the right time. We are not talking about entertainment for teenagers here, or not only entertainment for teenagers. These networks matter, and they will matter even more as we go into the future. And with the 5G evolution, we start adding more and more domains: automotive, smart cities, smart agriculture. These digital networks become the lifeblood of our digital society. And therefore, we need to be very careful that we don't try and dictate when technology is deployed, but rather see when the maturity is there. So we need the trials, we need the proof of concepts. And if we look at the maturity of the ORAN standards at the moment, it varies greatly across those working groups. We can see that the 10 working groups here, some have just started, some have been around for quite some time, and there's definitely a variation in quality, if you will. Indeed, if you look at ORAN as a standards organization, it's still very young. And there is still work to do to make sure that the standards are of a quality to provide world-class networks. Nokia is actively trying to push this along. So within ORAN, there is a group which is looking at procedural improvements, trying to improve the quality of the standards, and Nokia is leading that. So we believe in that. So the message is ORAN is an important part of the future. Nokia believes in that. But we need to make sure that we don't jump onto that technology before it is mature enough to provide quality networks. You can see on the right some analysts' comments on who is working in ORAN, who is the leading vendor there. So the change to ORAN also requires a slightly different mindset. And there are certain issues or principles that the operator must take into account before deploying an ORAN system or ORAN components. We've mentioned about maturity. Clearly, that's a given. The operators are in the best position to judge the maturity of those technologies, to try out those technologies. It should be the operator's choice when a technology should be deployed. But beyond that, the operators need to be able to take into account the additional costs and complexities. Some of those, shall we say, disadvantages of a disaggregated system have been mentioned today. It's not a showstopper necessarily, but they do need to be taken into the overall business case. You need to think about the need to integrate all these small pieces together. If you make the network a jigsaw puzzle with different pieces coming from different vendors, then someone needs to put those pieces together and someone needs to make sure they fit. And more than that, someone needs to make sure that the performance from one edge to the other is what you need. So we need to factor that in to the overall cost. It is not a showstopper, but it needs to be done. And we clearly also need a clear responsibility matrix. when we have many entities involved in creating this network, we need to know who's responsible for what. Otherwise, you start getting finger pointing. There's something wrong with the network. Oh, it's not mine. You want to be talking to a different vendor. This is not my problem. There needs to be a clear structuring so that for the operator, there is a clear chain of command, a clear responsible person, so that we can get these things fixed. Equally, it was said in the previous presentation that ORAN is wonderful because I can just pick any sort of software modules and throw them together and it will all work. And if some aren't ready, then that's fine. I'll just pick it up later. I don't think that's actually the case. My view is we have an integrated system. We have services we need to provide to the user. There are functions and features that have to be there, and they have to work with each other. And this means, in actual fact, what you need is you need a compliance system end to end. That is what the user sees. And in those terms, we do need to have alignment between the different modules, between the different vendors. And we need multi-vendor IoT testing to make sure it works. And lastly, we do need to be concerned about long-term sustainability. Clearly, the idea of increasing the ecosystem of vendors is good, and increasing the innovation is good. But networks aren't just there for a couple of weeks or a couple of days. We need to provide reliable, performant networks for many years to regain that investment. And that means we need to make sure that the vendors we use will be around in that time, and that they will have the capability to support the maintenance, the new release of the software, the new release of the standards, to make sure the whole network stays up to date. If I have one vendor in one module which has introduced a new feature, but somewhere else in the system another vendor says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, then that feature won't be available. So that was looking at some of the issues that need to be taken into account. I want to come back to one of the real pluses of ORAN. One of the things that Nokia is driving, arguably Nokia actually brought some of these ideas into ORAN, and that's this near real-time RIC. This ability to make the RAN programmable from AI and ML-based applications. And in Nokia, we've taken that one step further, where we tried to bring other aspects which are similar, like the MEC and other things together to provide this environment, this programmable environment where RIC X apps, MEC apps, and third-party X apps can all be run on the same platform. So we have a common platform where we can then provide this functionality. So we are a little over time, so let me just try and sum up the main points I wanted to make. So the first point is clearly Nokia is investing to lead in ORAN solutions. We believe in ORAN. We think it's one of the key solutions for the future. We are developing ORAN compliance systems, and we will deliver those when the standards and when the elements are mature enough for enterprise quality, world-class quality networks. One needs to remember that ORAN is optional, and the best solution really depends on specific networks and specific cases. It's a very large difference if you have an existing network out there or networks out there, or if you're starting with a clean sheet. Those are very different cases, and indeed one needs to look at every deployment or every operator's situation uniquely and judge where it makes sense and where it doesn't. As was said in previous presentations, ORAN changes the ecosystem. So we need these multi-vendor solutions, and to get those, there were the issues I showed on the previous slide, where we need that strong governance. We need some control here to make sure we don't have chaos, to make sure we have a performant, reliable system in the end. End-to-end performance will still remain a key factor. This is how your users will judge you as an operator. The fact that you say you're using ORAN is basically of no value to them. If you can provide the performance they need at a reduced cost, then we're getting somewhere. The fifth point, and maybe it's not surprising Nokia is trying to make this point, but the long-term relationships remain important. Regardless of how we disaggregate the network, those networks are not something to change overnight. They're not a thing of days, they are a thing of weeks, months, and years. We need them to work. We need to have the evolution path to bring in new features, new releases. So we need to build long-term business relationships. We need trusted partners to bring this to reality today and provide us the evolution path for tomorrow. And lastly, we need to factor in and find a place for the test efforts and the vendor alignment. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope this has been of interest, and I wish you an excellent rest of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Colin Lakew. Thank you very much. Now we have a last speaker who's an international speaker from Telefonica, Germany. Mr. Matthias is the Director of Mobile Access and Transport Network. Mr. Matthias is from Germany. Over to you, Matthias.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me and thanks for the invite. Really happy to speak here, and was also very insightful for me to listen to my colleagues speaking in front of me. So this was quite a good, how to say, it created a quite good picture about the whole ecosystem, what we are talking about here. But I have now the same challenge. I need to share my screen. Let's see if we get this done. I hope you can see it. I put it on the
Yes,
screen.
we can see. We can see. Yeah.
Good. Perfect. So let me start. OpenRAN at Telefonica Germany. But let me start with 3 points. The first one, why is OpenRAN for us important? It resonates with our company purpose. So we just created a new purpose for Telefonica Germany, where we are saying we want to democratize access to a sustainable digital future for our customers. And I think this resonates very well with the ideas of OpenRAN, also democratizing the access technology to our network. So this is the first thing which is important. The second thing which is important, and this is a core belief that I have, we have seen all during the last years that it's possible to virtualize. It's possible to cloudify our network functions. So we all did this in the past, in the recent years. We virtualized our cores, we put it in our telco clouds. We are now on the way to put it into the public cloud, and it's absolutely possible. And we all enjoy actually the freedom which we get with having this technology in place. We enjoy to create open APIs. We start to orchestrate our services. And this is something what is happening. And then the question is, why is this not possible in the radio network? And I think it's possible. So this is really something where I believe in, because we have seen it, we have done it, and it will be also possible on the side of radio networks. And the last point, which is an important one, OpenRAN is existing, it's live, so we are playing around with it, and this is the good thing. So because when you can play around with it, you can learn, you can develop it, and you can make it happen for our customers. With this, let me start the presentation. Telefonica Worldwide, just to give you a little bit an impression where I'm coming from. We are one of the 10 largest telecommunication companies in the world. Plenty of customers, 12 countries worldwide where we operate, more than 100,000 employees. So it's quite something. When we look at Telefonica Germany, we are having 44 million customers on our network, 8,000 employees, and 7.5 billion euro revenue in 2020. And at the moment, we are growing our business. because we changed strategy. We changed strategy in a way that we want to deliver an as good network in the country. We have here a fierce competition with Deutsche, with Vodafone, and we also see a new entrants coming up. And as said, we want to be competitive, and we changed our strategy to be competitive. Actually, we got recognized during the last years with many awards. So actually, last year we have shown that our network reached the first time a very good label, actually, where Umlaut, I think it's known in the industry, formerly P3, where they tested our network and said, okay, you are now on eye level with your competitors. And this was quite a big thing for us to be on eye level with the competition, and we are running faster. We are deploying at the moment 5G as we speak. We have more than 1,700 antennas up and running for 5G, and we are evolving it further. So this just to start the story. And this is the thing what I mentioned earlier. December 14th last year, we put the first Open RAN sites on air in Germany. So we put them actually really in the live network. It's not just a pure POC. It's really an integration into our live network, having real customer traffic on it, and now observing, fine-tuning, etc. And we will go on. This was just the start. So we are deploying, as we speak, a small cluster. We will continue with small cell pilots, actually in the city of Munich, where I'm sitting at the moment. And we also will partner, hopefully, with our friends from Nokia in the Berlin area in our innovation cluster, also to start to test the near-time break functionalities, also in order to learn what an incumbent brings to the table in the Open RAN ecosystem. So that means it's alive, it's kicking, but it's definitely not where we want to be. When we look on the vendor choices which we made so far, and this is not finished, that's why you see still here the full picture. So we started actually for our pilots to work together with Altiostar. Doesn't mean that we are not talking to Mavenir, for example. We started on the RU side with KMW. Doesn't mean that we are not talking to the rest of the ecosystem. Virtualization, we started with VMware, continued with Red Hat, front row, partnering with Atwa, etc., etc. So it means there is an ecosystem, and this is the beauty of this ecosystem, that we see you can make choices and you can test different combinations, and you need still to evolve it. The key thing here is, for an operator, we don't, at least for us as an operator, we don't have the complete knowledge on board right now. And one of the former speakers said, where we talk about DevOps, where we talk. Sorry, there is somebody.
You are now muted.
Okay. Where we really talk about, or where we, I have it now an echo on the, somebody has the microphone open, I think. Okay. Yeah, where we evolve at the moment our organization towards DevOps capabilities. This is also the reason why in my organization, for example, I have the whole end-to-end accountability for the mobile access and transport network. It means it starts really from architecture, planning, engineering, deployment, operations, optimization. So the organization is accountable for the full loop. And the reason why we did this, why we combined engineering, we work with a system integrator. In the pilots, we have chosen NEC. So NEC is helping us to evolve our ecosystem. So this is at the moment where we are. When we continue, actually, then there's one thing which is extremely important. When we really look at our vendor ecosystem, the existing one, it's also not plug and play, but it's closer to plug and play. Here we have something but it's definitely not plug and play. So we have to make selections, we have to make choices. And at the moment, as the ecosystem is still evolving, also on the interfaces, we still need to watch it, and we still need to make sure that the interfaces are evolving in a way that we really have the free choice later on. What we have, and this is the good thing about it, with the virtualization, with the cloudification, we have and we can leverage actually on an existing ecosystem. So this is really something what is extremely powerful when we combine it with the right features, the right partners, the right hardware, etc. We look now also at the optimization of the network. We talked already about the near-term rig. There will be also, I think, other possibilities coming up. I think the functionalities which we have now in our SON systems, they will evolve very much, and their artificial intelligence will play a role, and this will help us to really to get to our customers the networks which they deserve, providing a superior customer experience. And I touched upon the skill set change in the operator already. It's super important when we are not focusing on the right skill set in the right place in the organization, this whole thing is not going to happen. What we also see, we have at the moment a bit also the discussion, we have OpenRAN, we have vRAN, and maybe the vRAN is even a bridge for existing operators, because there is still the thing around the legacy. One of the former speakers also mentioned this one. We need really to watch it, and we need to see what is then really the right thing, the right choice which we need to make. Because still, from a classical radio vendor perspective, we get everything what we need at the moment. Nevertheless, everything is tailor-made, everything is in the box, everything is a black box actually, and we need to see how to break it. No? And there the thing is, the virtual products are there, and we should also watch this ecosystem to see, okay, how can we leverage on it. Nevertheless, the key is, and this is in both ecosystems, the open APIs, this has to be there, and this will help us to evolve actually the ecosystem towards the full Open RAN functionality. What we see at the moment as challenges is the maturity of the software. And the other thing, and this is at the moment really, forgive me my wording, a pain in the ass, we don't have the full-blown ecosystem on remote radioheads or active antennas covering the full spectrum which we own at the moment in Europe, or particularly in Germany. So this is something where we are still pushing with many partners to get actually the right hardware, because we don't believe, at least not now, in overlay networks. We really want to change the network when we do it. And there is at the moment a lack of the right hardware. So this is something where we're looking for to partner and to find the right means to continue. And last but not least, the thing is, what we also start to evolve now is really orchestration, because in the whole ORAN ecosystem, automation will be key. Without automation, we will not gain anything. Automation/orchestration is a must, because it will really unleash the full capabilities of the ecosystem. With this, I want to conclude my quick presentation, and I hope I gave you some insights what we are doing, how we are doing it. I mean, there are more insights, more links. We are also participating in all the ORAN bodies. We try to push the ecosystem. We try really to make a difference. And we really want to make it happen. We really want to have it live. And as said, we believe in it. And as said, our purpose is we democratize access for a sustainable digital future for our customers. And this will be a big contribution to our company purpose. With this, I want to conclude my presentation. Thanks for having me. And I hope it gave you some insights what's happening over in Europe. Thank you very much.
Yes, Matthias, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we heard an international operator, how open they are for the Open RAN technology. And we are already running late. I will not take much of your time. I would like to thank our chief guest, Sri S.K. Gupta ji, Chivi Ramchandran sir, Daryl John Smith, Nilesh, Rajesh Singh, Manish, Sanjay, Colin, Matthias, once again, thank you very much for sharing all your views for the inaugural session. We come to the end of the inaugural session. We will move to the first technical session as already the speakers and the chairman, Madam Tipa Tyagi, is already here. So we'll get into the next session. Thank you.